Hello, and thank you for tuning in. This is the first of a series of videos designed to teach people how to use PHP, the basic syntax, and some of the more intermediate aspects of it, as well as maybe leading in some more advanced programming concepts within the PHP language. So to get started, first of all, what is PHP? PHP is a server-side programming language used to run operations on the server, like authenticated user logins, cookie handling, and stuff like that. Just really anything that does it in the background that isn't used for JavaScript. In order to run PHP, there must be a web server with PHP installed on it, or a local server, like WAMP, or Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. It's an application that you can get on the just from a Google search, and it runs runs Apache, MySQL, and PHP on a Windows machine locally, so you can edit the files and see the output here. That's sort of like a development environment. Anyways, so also PHP files are text files that run scripts and are interpreted line by line. So there's nothing special, no compilers or anything like that, aside from the PHP language, it's executables themselves. And they can be, like I said, edited in any text editor. I'm using Notepad++ because it helps with the syntax highlighting and line numbers and stuff like that. And PHP files can only be accessed from the web server, like to be edited. Like for example, you have to download them or edit them right on the server using a FTP program or something like that. You have to have some sort of access directly to the file in its file structure. PHP files won't display their code to the browser, and if you download them, they won't show any code in them. It'll only just show what the intended output is. So, just to begin, we're going to be covering some things like data types and variables. Variables, like the string, the integer, the boolean, and the arrays. The next video we're going to cover errors, and then the next few videos we're going to cover something called control statements. I'm going to get into those a little bit more in depth when we come to them. I'm going to cover arrays more in depth, which is a data type, but it's also like an object, and I'm going to cover that later as well. I'm also going to cover declaring and calling functions, user-created functions, as well as native functions within the PHP language itself, and parameters. Parameters are important because they are basically arguments, and I'm going to get into that. And the reason why it has its own video is because it's important for object-oriented programming as well, which we're going to touch on at a later date. Alright, so to begin, we've got just a sample PHP script. It's very simple, nothing to it. Basically, if I'm just going to explain the script, PHP is encapsulated in PHP scripts. Anything run in here will be interpreted by the server and not by the browser. The PHP script is as follows: a triangle, like a less than sign, question mark, and the letters PHP, and then it's always ended with a question mark and a greater than sign. And there is a way of doing it without this PHP letters, but it's highly unrecommended because some servers aren't configured to be allowed to do that, and then it will output all this stuff just as plain text right on the screen, and we don't want that. So we've got a comment. And basically what a comment is it allows programmers to be able to communicate what the script is intended for without actually having to create a separate file with like a change log or something like that. It's just quick, alright, text in the comment, or for example, the script is designed to do this. It's just in layman's terms what is going on here. Or else, and there are two different types of comments. There's block level comments, which are, you start it by starting this, / and a star key, and then you create your comment. It doesn't have to be on a new line. I just do it for the sake of so that it looks nice and it's legible. Then there's also, and then you close it with the star and then the forward slash whenever your comment's done, but you can have multiple lines. So, right, and it'll always be commented. It's green in text or Notepad++, just because that's the way I like it. That's just part of the application. It's not a feature of PHP itself. And then there's also the line, or the single line comments. Basically, you do a double forward slash, and then you type whatever your comment is. But then anything after that double forward slash is automatically commented out. It's considered an inline comment. So, as you can see here, I've got one here. It has a single forward slash, so it's just like, ignore this, or this integer or float, for example. And then boolean, array, etc. Okay, so we've got variables. Variables are declared by using the number sign, or not the number sign, the dollar sign. And then the variable name. There's some rules when it comes to variable naming. They can't be any of the reserved words, like for example print, array, true, false, all kinds of stuff. Yeah, you can't use them. There's a complete list on php.net. But other than that, and it has to start with a letter. It can't start with a number. It can also start with an underscore. And if we look here, okay, so let's look at the first variable. Okay, so this is, I've named my variable var1. Not very creative, but just for demonstration purposes. And then we've got ourselves equal sign, which is actually the assignment operator. It assigns whatever's on the right to the variable name on the left. And the variable name is actually a container in memory, but we give it a name so that we can reference it later on, like down here. So in this case, we reference a string called hello you world. Basically, it's hello world, and then actually I put in these two escape characters to let you know that you can have string inside of a string without having to do any sort of concatenation or nothing like that. Another way of doing it is putting single quotation marks, right? Basically, a string has to be encapsulated with quotation marks, either single or double, but you have to be consistent. And then once you end the variable declaration, there's a semicolon. You don't always have to give a variable a value when you declare it, but it's very good programming practice to give it a value. So when we go down further, we've got another variable. I've declared it using the dollar sign, and then a new name has to be unique. And then I've given it a value of -3.123. This is actually a negative float. It can be negative or positive, it doesn't matter. And a float is basically just with the decimal. You can do it without the decimal too. That's just a regular integer. You also can do 0.123. It doesn't matter. Like mathematically wise, further going on, it will. But for case of point of this, for these purposes, it's not relevant. So then we have another one. This one's called a boolean. Basically, what a boolean is, it's true or false, yes or no, 1 or 2, on or off, basically. It's either signified by true or false or 1 or 0. It's an on or off function, or data type. It has only 2 states. Used for like control statements and stuff like that. In this case, it's going to output as 1 when I print it, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second. Okay, next data type is array. This array it's actually an object, which is a complex data type, but we're not going to get into that right now for the purposes of this demonstration. It's just a data type. And it has indexes. In this case, it's 1 and 2. And with PHP, you can have you can also name the indexes, but we're not going to get into that right in the second one. We'll do that further down in the arrays portion. Alright, so we get into the next line. It says print. That's just a native function inside PHP, as well as print r. Those are native functions. This one basically means print this string or whatever I'm giving you to the screen. This one means print this array. And the reason why I did them separate is because if you print var4, it'll show the word array, and you'll understand it in a second. So if we look, it says print var1, var2, and var3, and then br, which is just an HTML line break. And that's just to separate these two lines as the output on the screen. Okay, so we've got var1, so it says hello you world, and it's got like this dot. This dot is concatenation. It just means that we're sticking these two values together. It doesn't have to be there. And we're concatenating, we're sticking a space onto that. And again, a space in between these two variables, just for the sake of presentation. So if we go here, and I'm going to show you what this outputs. Okay, so you see it says hello you world. It's got the, see, hello you world. And it's got the 0.123, and true is made as a 1. If you make it false, it just disappears. It means it's not there. And there's the array. So basically, the printer says, all right, we're printing an array. And at index 0, there's the number 1. At index 1, there's the number 2. And all that means at this point is that array, basically there's arrays, variables inside of a variable. It's the, how I'm going to explain it right now. The only other thing is that you can assign values of another variable into another variable. For example, if I put the value of var1 into var3, and I save it, and I go back to, and I refresh the page, define constant variable. Oops. I'll cover what that was all about in the error section. And actually, it was because I didn't put the number sign. Not this mistake. Alright, so it says it put the value of var1 into var3. Okay. Alright, and it took away the false because the false, or the true, sorry, because the true doesn't exist anymore in this case. Alright, and that pretty much covers data types, comments, and variables. I'm going to touch on these again, but for now, thanks for watching.